Thank you very much, Dean Burkhart. It's awfully scary when you first get up here. I want you to know that this lovely orchid corsage that I'm wearing came all the way from Hawaii yesterday to one of the students here as a gift from her father. And I feel real honored to be wearing it and to share it with you. And if things get dull, you just look at that, and you'll have had your money's worth. The teacher and creativity. I started out with a topic, are you a creative teacher? Then I went to the topic of the way I look at it, because I didn't want to put you in a self-conscious position. And then I think I got quite self-conscious myself looking at it. So now I have put it out in the broad perspective of the teacher and creativity. And I hope, though, that I can make it feel a part of each one of us. And that as I talk, I have no desire at all to shake you in terms of seeing yourself as a creative person, but rather to sharpen your own appreciation of yourself as a creator. Because as far as I am concerned, each one of us is creative. Every child in the classrooms that you teach is a creator. And I think when we look at children in this way, maybe we see things somewhat differently. I'd like to review a little bit of the research for you, let you see it at least through my eyes. In 1950, when we began to be really excited about the gifted child, Dr. Guilford made a memorable speech before the American Psychological Association as its president, in which he tried to challenge people to the notion that maybe intelligence wasn't the only factor in creativeness. And he listed such things as possibly the sensitivity to problems was one of the more important variables in whether or not people became creative. Maybe it isn't the ability to find the right answer to the question that's in the teacher's head and comes out her mouth. Maybe it's rather the ability to sense the problems that makes a difference in whether or not a child really goes on to be creative and to see himself as a creator and the world as something that needs to be changed. See, if you see yourself passively and the world as already accomplished, then you behave differently. As long as we believed that the earth was flat, we operated in that sort of a context. And as long as children and adults see the world as completed, maybe they don't see their role as one of creativity. And so Guilford was saying, maybe when we test for intelligence, we ought to test and find out whether or not there is such a factor as sensitivity to problems. Maybe we ought to find out about curiosity in people. Maybe we ought to find out what it is in a child that puzzles and wonders and is curious. And then we ought to see whether or not we could maintain that and even enhance it as human beings grow and develop. It's a strange phenomenon, and one that we worry about considerably, that children are so full of questions and ideas and askings and tellings, and then by the time they get into the upper grades and the high school, we have taught them so very well to sit still and raise their hands, that the puzzles and the questioning are gone. Now, no one knows better than I what it means to stand with a group of children or sit with them or work with them and have them be active and vigorous and full of questions, and how difficult it is to go down the line of traditional notions and foster curiosity and questioning. This is a real job. I feel real honored to have some of my student teachers here this afternoon. And I know some of the things that are going on in their minds as they listen. How do you get the thing together? Well, this becomes the creative thing about a teacher, in my estimation. The ability to put two and two together and get four, or should I say it this way, put wigglers and wigglers and wigglers together and get tremendous, exciting ideas and a wonderful curriculum. This is the big job of teaching. In another week, we start a summer school class. And I see in this group also people that sat in 542 as their first graduate class. And how we worked to try to make us excited and curious, and just like those people that started the school at the age of 6. What makes the difference? What happens along the way? Is it teaching? Is it parents? Is it peers? What is it that makes the kind of pressure that makes us unable to raise the kinds of questions? And you see, Guilford is saying maybe this is one of the things that we need to be able to test now. To find out, is questioning, the ability to sense a problem, one of the real factors of creativity? And if this is true, see, then we're in business. Because people come full of questions. They come with some sensitivity to problems. And we can develop this, I think. We can make more opportunities for people to be able to raise questions, for people to be unwilling to allow closure before we've had many more facts to think about. Well, there are all kinds of little ideas that Guilford had about that, and you might like to go to his original speech. He had another idea, that maybe a fluency factor, the ability to have all kinds of ideas. Oh, he said you'd test it, for instance, some way like this. Have people name as many things as they can think of that are around. Well, to see how fast your ideas come to you. And maybe this is a factor. Instead of teaching the way we so often do, of asking a question, and the student's job is not to see how many ideas he has, but can he figure out the one that the teacher had before she asked the question? Well, there are all kinds of ideas in Guilford's original article, and I wish you'd take a little time to read it, and maybe this is one of the purposes of a seminar. Another person who took up the idea, the challenge, was Ketzel. And he then tried to translate this into some research. And he took a group of students, a large group, and he gave them the tests that they had developed, which are called tests of creativity. And we don't have very many of them. I don't think we have any, as nearly as I know, on the open market as yet. But there are an awful lot of researchers that are using some. And they tested a whole student body, and they took out of that the top 20% in creativity. And then they gave this whole group of people again an intelligence test. And they took out of that the top 20% of highly intelligent. And then they compared the highly creative and the highly intelligent. There were 23 points difference in the mean IQ of the highly intelligent and the highly creative, as measured by the test. When they asked teachers about these people, which ones do you think the teachers like best? That's right. The highly intelligent. A very significant preference for the highly intelligent as compared with the highly creative. The highly creative, incidentally, and the general student body ran about the same in teachers' choices. This scares me. But it also tells me something, you see, about what we have expected teachers to have as a classroom. The highly creative rated such things as, when they were given a battery of tests, etc., wide range of interest, emotional stability, and a high sense of humor. The sense of humor of the highly creative was significantly different from the sense of humor of the rest of the students tested. The highly intelligent wanted to possess now the characteristics that they believed led to success. They were kids who held an ideal that was very much like the ideal that teachers hold for children. The highly creative didn't hold this kind of an ideal. In fact, it was kind of negative, kind of the reverse of what the teachers thought would be. And when it came to imagination and originality and these kinds of tests of fluency, of creative response to ideas, it seemed as if the ideas of the creative people spring from, they just go on beyond, while the ideas of the others tended to be tied down to this. That they had rather humorous and novel and unexpected endings to stories and ideas and plot situations. That they seemed to play with the idea and the stimulus and to go beyond it, you see. Now, they're continuing the work up at the University of Chicago and doing some real interesting things with it. And another place that has interested me more for two reasons, because it is my alma mater, but mostly because they're working with children. Torrance at the University of Minnesota took the same idea and tried it out on younger children, grades 1 through 6. And he gave them two kinds of implements, or two kinds of things to work with. One was materials that would challenge inventiveness like toys. In fact, I believe there was an editorial in the monthly paper not long ago about what was the world coming to when somebody asked children to think of all the uses they could for tin cans. Well, this is one of Torrance's ways of getting at how do kids really play with things, you see. What kinds of ideas do they have? And then he gave a set of pictures in which he was trying to get at how many questions do children ask, what kinds of questions, and then he'd have them guess, what do you think happened before this picture was taken? And this sort of ability develops very slowly. But what are the consequences of this picture develops rapidly and continuously. Then he took these children in grades 1 through 6, and he divided them into three groups. He took the highly intelligent, the highly creative, and the highly creative intelligence, you see. Three separate groups. He found out in his that if he had taken them only on intelligence, which is the way we started out to find the gifted children in the United States, 70% of the highly creative kids would not have been in the study. See, maybe Benet and Simon have done us a disservice when they isolated first the qualities that they did isolate. Had they isolated these creative qualities first, maybe we would have been spending our time now trying to figure out some of these other qualities. There is no doubt, apparently, but there are some real interesting and exciting things right here on our doorsteps that are happening and that we'll be a part of, and that young teachers now can get in on the ground floor of some ideas that we didn't know. It's like the people that lived at a certain time, the only thing they knew for sure was that the world was flat. It didn't turn out to be that way. Like the medical man addressing the class, half of what we're teaching is wrong, and we don't know what half. And this is what's happening right now. But we're teaching you out of the best we know. But this is kind of exciting things, you see. This really says that we are finding some things out about human beings that we haven't known. Well, what do you think happened here? The highly intelligent were better known by the teachers than were the highly creative. And they were certainly considered more desirable. Well, I know it and you know it, don't we? These highly creative youngsters. Lots of times Miss Hyatt and I have talked about this in housing. And you can talk about it in the classroom. You can talk about it at many places. Highly creative people can be a real challenge, and they can also be a real sore point for the quietness and calmness of the rest of the lives of the rest of the people. The highly intelligent and the highly creative were considered unruly, dominant, and independent. Now, how did the kids in the rooms look at these first to sixth graders? Well, they thought that when it came to nominating the ones that had the most ideas and the best ideas for being naughty and silly and wild, they thought the creative ones were the best ones. The most intelligent had the most friends. This is a little bit contradictory to some things we believe. The highly creative had the fewest friends. But you see, we've never compared in this way before. We've taken highly intelligent and less intelligent. But here we are taking highly intelligent and highly creative, two rather interesting and important concepts. I couldn't help but think this morning as Dr. Miller was talking. boy, do we need creative thinking in this population problem. We're going to have to be inventive and wise beyond our years right now. The highly creative were the less accessible psychologically. Well, there's just all kinds of interesting things I'd like to tell you about this. But a seminar has as its goal to get us all involved. And I want to throw out some of these ideas, and then I want you to react with me. They did another interesting little idea, though. They took 5 children out of a room, and they put one creative child in each of the groups of 5. And then they watched the whole group with eyes particularly on the creative one. They gave them a box of science toys and said, okay, go to work. And they gave them 25 minutes to play with them and have an interesting idea. And then they gave them 5 minutes in which they were to pull together the ideas they had and make some kind of a little presentation, and then 25 minutes again to talk to the whole group about what had happened. Well, you guessed it. Even in the 2nd grade, the creative ones were kind of unpleasant about things. They wanted the whole business. They didn't show much consideration for the others. They didn't seem to have a goal orientation that was like other people's. And when they got in the 3rd grade and the 4th grade, they just went on and did it by themselves. Worked over here with science toys, and the rest of them worked over here. In the 5th grade, the leadership became a little bit more pronounced. They did get involved with the total group, but they were dominant kind of thing, kids. And in the 6th grade, they were the same way, only more so. But now they were becoming aggressive about it. And Torrance draws the conclusion that maybe what we have to do if we really want to foster creativity is to help the creative individual, whenever we recognize him, to be assertive, but not hostile and aggressive. See, some new ideas for us to take on. Now, how do you help a youngster? Some of us sitting here, we've been in rooms together, and we know about certain youngsters. And maybe this is one of the clues that we need to get to. Now, I was interested in reading something of Margaret Mead in this whole area, too, particularly her notion that discovering old theorems and basic ideas may be a prelude to new discovery and creation. See, we don't really know. The research that's been done on who becomes the inventive person, who's the one that really creates new ideas and so on, we don't really have a lot of information. I couldn't help but think about Mr. Higgins when I was thinking about this part of it. His attempt to make people, make is right too, make people wrestle and find out for themselves about the square of the hypotenuse. Maybe discovering the old will help us into the future. Then I read some things by Mallinson in Science, and he says that we don't get creative scientists out of memorizing and learning about the creative products of others. We get it by being involved in the creative process ourselves. Now, a week from Monday, we start a class of graduate students. And what does this say to Helen Sorensen's teacher? Well, one thing it says very specifically to me. I don't know yet how I'm going to do it. I don't know if I can. But it says that there has to be something in the psychological environment of that classroom that helps teachers, because that's what we'll all be, see themselves as creators and a world to be changed. You can make a difference in the Garfield School. You can make a difference in the Eaton School. You can make a difference in Indiana education. Creativity is present in all of us. But we have to believe. We have to look out at every face that faces us and say, what is the secret to unlocking the potential? Somehow or other in that class, we all have to operate with each other so that we all become concerned about the learning of each one of us and all of us. Somehow or other, we've got to create the environment in which every person's ideas have significance and can be valued Now, this is not an easy measure. It's not an easy measure if you teach the kindergarten, and it's not an easy measure when you're teaching the graduate students. But for me, it seems the only thing I can get is I read people and I probably read the wrong people. I read the ones that say the same thing I believe. But they all seem to say to me that if you really want people to have confidence in themselves, then they have to see themselves reflected back from you as competent, able, creative, imaginative people. A very good friend of mine had a habit of reacting to people's questions and say, "That's a good question." And one of his students challenged him and said, "Are all questions good questions in this class?" Well, see, this is the kind of challenge that your students have a right to ask of you if you are trying to say each human in here has value. And I would hope for those of us going out to teach next fall for the first time that increasingly every child has real significance. And I believe it more today than I did a week ago, because all the things I've read seem to say to me that the way we have prepared teachers has made them value conformers, and this I don't think we intended to do. We intended, didn't we, to help us value all children and to make creators out of all, or at least for every one of us to be able to create. So there's a psychological climate, and I'm wrestling with this, and you will wrestle with it, I'm sure, as you look forward to next fall, whether you've taught 1 year or 15 years. Then there's the physical environment. And I know about college classes being about the dullest places that you can go into, I mean physically, oftentimes. And then I thought, I closed my eyes and I could see that long, I don't know, it wouldn't be a 1-horse table, I guess it'd be a 3-horse table that I have in my room over at Burris, and those folding chairs, and I thought, boy, physical environment, the facilities aren't going to be. And yet I've never heard a student complain about those. That's just how nice college students are, isn't it? They just haven't complained about that, and this is probably not important. Someday there'll be a new education building, and the seats will be softer, and we'll have to do a little study to see whether or not we're more creative on softer seats than we are on harder seats. That's parenthetical. But there are going to be things in that room. There are going to be books. There are going to be hundreds of books in that room from all the greatest thinkers that I can find. One way to challenge. There are going to be books in your room next year. This is one of the ways that people get excited about things. To read and agree and disagree and wrestle and try desperately to find out what in the world that person meant. There are going to be tapes in that room. There are going to be records in that room. There are going to be films. There are going to be as many stimulating sensory materials as I can gather together. Because I've been reading, too, some of the research that they've been doing as they try to send people up into the space, and they try to find out who will be the good people to go into war, and all this sort of thing. There are all kinds of experimentations going on, you see. We're not the only people that are wondering how you get creative, inventive, ingenious people. And they found that a sensory-rich environment is a must to good human production. So there are going to be lots of things in there. I won't be as inventive as my student teachers who have pigs and guinea hens and little chickens and big chickens and all this sort of thing. But there'll be a way, you see, for us to find out. A sensory-rich environment. And I think lots of times it's real easy to think that when you're teaching an education course or a literature course, all you do is carry a book in. But there's more than that. Because there are many books. And there are many media that you use to stimulate the thinking. Because you see, you get excited about the population problem, but you don't just get excited with your head, you get excited with your whole body. And this is one way I think that we're going to stimulate creativity. A sensory-rich environment. Torrance had an interesting idea. He called it an idea trap. You know, you've always kind of wished for one, haven't you? You know, you're going along, you get an idea. Well, he went into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades of some of the schools in Minneapolis, and he presented this idea, and they had a little paper sack. This was the trap. And then whenever you got an idea, you wrote it down. You couldn't write the whole idea down because you're probably in the middle of math class or in the middle of science or something. So you hurried up and trapped the idea and dropped it in the sack. And then when you got a little time, you came back to it. The kind of thing that some of us do when we wake up in the night and we've got an idea and we write it down. The next morning you can't read it because you wrote in the dark and all. But somehow or other you oftentimes get it back. There's another interesting idea about when you get those ideas. You never get those ideas except about things you've been really doing some thinking about, according to what I've been reading. And so this classroom is going to be an open-ended classroom. We aren't going to try to get answers. We're going to try to get as many kinds of reactions. This is why it's so dreadfully hard when you work with student teachers. And it'd be so easy if you could say, well, now you do this and this and this with Clint, and this will happen. Or this and this and this, and Hank will behave. You got to have idea traps. And trap those ideas anytime you can find them. So the first thing, it seems to me, that it says, if I'm going to stimulate creativity, is to have the kind of an environment in which people grow and become themselves and can be different. We've talked for a long time about individual differences. And I sometimes get the notion that we talked about them with the idea we get them eliminated someday. And yet it's the exciting part about a classroom is that they are so different. But it's also the part that makes it so hard to live with them. And this is one of the things that maybe we could do a little bit better job about as we work in our preparation for becoming a teacher, or as we work through on our masters, or we continue our education all on our own. The second part that's going to be in this classroom of mine this summer is that we're really going to struggle or wrestle, or whatever word you want to use with it, with the problems we have. There's going to be supplementary material. There are going to be lots of books to read to. But Mrs. Smith is going to be able to feel that she has struggled with her own problem. Nobody came up with a pat answer. And the answer she comes up with is the answer that she is going to try to carry into interpretation. Recently I watched a little boy and a little girl learning to walk. And I watched, you could just feel the difficulty of putting one foot ahead of another. We forget sometimes that even the physical comes real hard. I wonder why then we think you could take a course in psychology and a few courses in methods and put 2 and 2 together and come out with creative teaching in 1 year or 2 years. I was so proud of the Ball Staters that I visited. I'm always proud of the student teachers we have, the kind and quality of people. I hope we don't give them the notion that they ought to be perfect and they ought to be anything other than beginners for, well, at my age, I'd say for at least 30 years. That we not give them the notion that if you, like some people do, they say to them, well, if you'll just start out and really chew the kids out for the first 2 weeks, you'll be set. Yeah. But you won't have a creative classroom. You really won't have any fun teaching school. You really won't want to look out in the future and see those same kids. Because I guess if it's all right for teachers to chew children out, then children can grow up and chew out children. Yeah, it gets to be a vicious circle. We ought to live more wisely. We ought to live more creatively. We ought to be able to transfer all of this into some kind of living effectively. Do you really want creative children? Then we mustn't think that we can get pat answers to solve the problem. Better decide on the kind of climate we really want in classrooms. If we really want to foster creativity, then I guess we're going to have to put up with some things that we hadn't thought about. And as parents, maybe we can't have this and this and this and have the same kind of complacency or quietness. The satisfaction that comes with the creative, inventive person in the household is a different kind. I lived with one for 2 summers. It was real exciting. But you have to have some values that are not just conforming values. And you have to be willing to look a little ridiculous, too, to your neighbors and your friends. See, how much can a young teacher value creativeness, both of her own and of the children's? Those of us who have taught 5 years can help an awful lot to protect the creativity in the mind of a young teacher. And I suppose in the same token, those of us who have reared some children could be a real help to people beginning. Now, as I'm talking, I can see a lot of things happening to your faces. I wish you'd feel free to interrupt me, and if you'll just raise, well, just even a little finger, I'll give you a chance to talk. Why don't I just now say, would you like to comment on any part of this thus far?
I'm concerned about your statement that the creative child has the lesser friends Is that not the fault of the teacher and her objective in the classroom?
Could be. Could be. Some people I was reading said, well, maybe we shouldn't be so worried about making well-rounded people out of everybody. Maybe we ought to let some of them have square corners and think at right angles. And maybe we don't need to be so worried about the number of friends, but it is certainly one of the areas we'll want to investigate. We'll want to find out. Can you be creative and have lots of friends?
I think you answered that later on when you said we must, in the eyes of our peers, be a little bit ridiculous at times to learn to be creative. And this does not bring you friends.
No, it doesn't. Doesn't always.
And sometimes solitude is necessary for creativity. It doesn't allow the time to friends.
This is one of the things I would wish for all elementary children. And I thought of it again this morning when we talked about the population expansion and us standing limb to limb, I guess you'd say. I think you'd be amazed, people, at the number of little children that say to me, I wish sometimes I could just be alone. It's a rare child that's alone very much anymore. I've decided.
Has our grading system inhibited creativity?
I expect it has, in the way we grade and the way we translate it into papers. Mm-hmm.
That's inflicted on the college student when we come to teach.
Yeah. Yes. I had the real pleasure this spring of sitting in with a group of 5 or 6 college students just talking about it. And this was one of the interesting things. So the thing that interested me that night was that they weren't nearly as concerned about the grade that they might get as a result, but rather they were concerned about the way the professor felt about people that asked 45-degree angle questions. And I felt real badly about this because I think that most of us think we want people to ask questions and to be concerned and to have odd ideas. I expect, too, the only people that are ever going to make a difference in the grading system are sitting right here in this audience. And I expect so far we don't really know what we want to grade, do we? But you're certainly in an area there, this boxes us in and makes us afraid to value certain kinds of things.
What would happen if we threw out grading?
We get scared and bring them back in. I mean, this is the way we tend to.
When I didn't work on masters and went to satisfaction, unsatisfaction, and honors, and then somewhere along the line when I got working on later years, they went back to conventional grades. Why?
Well, I expect each one of us has an idea. The gentleman says that when he did his master's work here at Ball State, you had U and S and H, H meaning honors. And why did we go back to A, B, C? No, I guess it was the graduate students that preferred it.
As far as I could see,
and some faculty
they worked just as hard, and once in a while someone got a little better acquainted or did a lot of talking, and there were a lot of the upper, shall we say, the people that accomplished a good deal in class, and you had a lot of them in there, and just 2 out of about, I don't know whether 14 or 20 or something got the honors, and it was just someone that I suppose in some cases just struck the fancy.
Yeah.
And they begin to worry. Some of those people that were in there, I suppose, worried about the fact they didn't get so many A's and so many B's. But as far as I was concerned, I thought that we forgot about grades and discussed things maybe a little more freely because we wanted to. And I know I got just as much out of it, I feel, as just in my undergraduate work when we had our grades.
See, we get into all kinds of problems on this, but let's say that this is one of the areas we're going to have to use our imagination on. How about you when you're teaching class? Do you really think you could hold children and make them excited just about the learning they're doing if you didn't have any grades? How many times a day do you use grades to threaten? Or, I mean, now you, I don't mean you, I mean us. Lots of times we get into this trap. I know the millennium isn't here. I know there are an awful lot of people that really get interested in learning and the ideas that they're going to take home. I see it every summer I teach. I see it with student teachers. I know that they don't always talk to me real freely about the grades they get, but I really feel that this is a spot where you get people really wrestling with the basic things, and they know that the thing that's significant is whether or not they teach school as they go along and not whether or not the grade comes along as the A or the B. These are questions we're going to have to ask ourselves. These are questions we're going to have to help answer. And the answer doesn't lie just in throwing out the grades. The answer lies more deeply than this, but this would be one of the factors that would certainly be involved. Can we get, yes?
In the past, I think, 2 weeks now, we go longer than most schools. I have seen emotionally disturbed teachers more frequently than I'd ever expected to. Now, I believe that part of our present teaching is done for our own personal well-being and required by our present principals and superintendents. That is, we must go to a class emotionally prepared to teach. That means if we have a creative class, we may at some time not be emotionally prepared to be in that classroom.
Right.
That means the occasionally we get down on flying off the handle, losing our self-control, perhaps being a little ridiculous in our own retrospect. Are we prepared for these hazards? I don't believe we're prepared from the supervisory level that will leave us that academic freedom today in the current high school. At least not in the ones that I have been acquainted.
We're certainly going to have to be able to venture out on uncertainty, aren't we? You know, they're doing...
The uncertainty of losing your job.
Right. Of course, with... And the difficulty is we don't know how real the certainty of losing our job is. Sometimes I've thought maybe we ought to be more creative and maybe we wouldn't lose our job. Maybe we'd get, well, allowed to stay in the classroom and teach classes. It's a difficult question because so many of these things are inside of us. Let me digress a little bit here to just quote to you from some of the things I've been reading of Eric Fromm's in this notion of creativity and the willingness to step out that I heard in your talking. He says we have to be willing to practically be born each day. That creativity is the ability to step out into uncertainty and not be scared. Well, not too scared. Like it was when you were learning to walk and you walked along with your mother or somebody's hand. And then came the time when you all excitedly, have you watched somebody recently? Just all excitement and tingle, you know, about doing that, and the whole body works at it. Or the day you came away to college, the uncertainty. Or the day you entered your first graduate class, your first job. Uncertainty and yet secure in the knowledge that you were the kind of person that could do this. Also along the line that you're talking is that they're doing some experimentation with the idea of hand-picking the class for teachers. Having the teachers list the kinds of kids they want to work with and then pick the kinds of youngsters she has described.
Dr. Charlie, I've been interested in some recommendations I've been asked to write rather recently, and the superintendent has asked that very thing. We're trying to put children, the college person seemed most interested and would be happy because they were fire police assistants and they thought it would be interesting to me. And I thought that was interesting. And also back to this gentleman one while ago, in those early days with graduate studies, students felt free to do the best job possible. There were no salary raises just because you did graduate study. And then when some of them went into the universities away from here, they were asked what does this mean, because some of these teachers never gave raises for that very reason, because they said, now the moment we do that, and we've also tried to provide our students, and we want each one to feel special. The university or this other place says just what was the best thing. Then they, in many cases, they put just the B, which really has no meaning unless the authority gives it a meaning. And then they said that you must be an A student to do this type of thing. So you see, that's where that fear piece, as we mentioned.
Oh, you can just get all bottled up in bookkeeping. And it's no point in us laughing because we're just as bad. I know some people that tell student teachers if you'll every day put a little mark in your book, you can add it up at the end of the term and you don't have to have a guilty conscience at all. See, the only catch is we're forgetting about the humanity of the human sitting there. And when I first started to teach, that's what I did. Boy, and I did it religiously. And nobody could ever say to me, oh, that I didn't earn that. I could point to it here. They didn't go the next step, you see, and challenge me on the validity of the little marks that I had in there, nor by how I got there.
It's good, you know, what I think, and I've told the students that we have certain definite requirements for graduation through school, and there's certain things that we put down, and if we meet those requirements, we graduate. But no individual ever comes out of school with the same education, because they're different. The same way with college and so forth, with B and A and so forth. It's whether you, with your experience, can find a particular place where you fit in, can do a good job, and reach a given number of people that the public and the community wants you to reach. And the best teacher doesn't always reach everyone. In fact, they don't. It's here and there where they reach that has a great bearing on the lives of those who go on and make worthwhile contributions to society. I see that in different boys and girls I've had. Just think of some of them, what they're doing things that I couldn't do, and feel like I couldn't, but I had a little part in doing that. And I can see one particular individual, colored boy, he was my home run, and he didn't want to get up before the group. The group pushed him because they kind of liked him, sent him to the Red Cross representative, and I don't want to do well. I said, no, Charlie, they did that because they liked you. They just sort of railroaded you through, but you go down there and get to the meeting. I think about 26 different home runs in Richmond, and so he went down there and then came back and did a collection. And finally, over in Europe, he went around, made talks and so forth. And I think that was a turning point. His dad was dead. And some little things like that you don't know why, they turn out to do a lot of good.
And the whole point that we want to make then is that we are all the time in the whole business of human growth and development. We're the facilitators. As I say to the undergraduates, we're the people with 4 years of college. We're the ones in whom people have invested time and energy, and we have certainly invested more than anybody else in our education. Now, are we going to be able to draw out this creativeness? Are we going to be able to draw out the minimum and maximum? Are you signaling to me? Oh, good. Are we going to be... Just for that, I'll take a drink. Thank you. I thought maybe he was signaling about time. I realize now we didn't talk about how much time. The clock's still running, but the calendar hasn't turned, he said. I want to only make 2 more points now. I see if I can do them rather quickly, because I can tell you're just taking a hold of the bait and going far beyond me. Minimum and maximum. Are you signaling to me? Oh, good. Are we going to be... Thank you. I really feel like a speaker. Just for that, I'll take a drink. Thank you. I thought maybe he was signaling about time. I realize now we didn't talk about how much time. Okay. The clock's still running, but the calendar hasn't turned, he said. I want to only make 2 more points now. I see if I can do them rather quickly, because I can tell you're just taking a hold of the bait and going far beyond me. In my classes this summer, there's going to be more time for what we call brainstorming. I know you can't hear back there, or can you? No, I didn't think so. I was afraid of that. The cars. There's going to be more time for brainstorming with 4 ground rules. Oh dear. Judgment is going to be ruled out when people are talking, raising points. There's not going to be any incorrect answers when we're brainstorming. There's going to be freewheeling. You can put out as wild an idea as you can get, because out of wildness, I think, we're going to come the possibility of invention. Quantity is wanted. As many ideas as we can possibly get. When we get into a subject like grading, and you always do, then we're going to see what we can do to add onto and subtract from and multiply and divide on the responses that we have. If this technique will help more people to get more ideas into the hopper. Too many people have sat their way through when they really wanted to be a part of the talking and the ideas that we're going. Then we're going to have some sessions quite regularly in which we're going to just say, now we just want trial answers. Any kind of an answer goes. This isn't your completed thinking. Because I've seen this happen in summer school class, the first week or two, some real helpful people, throw out some ideas, and they get stuck with those, they get stuck with a thing and have to defend it all the rest of the term. And so we're going to have a trial period. See, we're going to have trial class for a week or so, in which you can put out as many kinds of ideas, and they can be queer, and they can be way out, and they can be way in, and it's all right, see, because we're in the trials. We aren't playing for keeps. Then after a certain length of time, we're going to be able to stop and say, well, what's our very best thinking now? This time we're playing for keeps. This is the time when we're going to say, at this stage of the game, I think. This is what I really believe about the teaching of reading. At this stage of the game, this is what I really think about how you get next to slow-learning youngsters. But this idea has struck me as one of having some merit. I have always worried about the people that get stuck with a half-baked idea real early in the term and then have to defend it all the rest of their term. I know what it shows about me as a teacher. Torrance did a study in which he watched teachers, and he said that 60% of the time the teachers spend trying to get people to conform. 9% of the time for creative thinking. These are sobering facts. I understand them. They aren't hard for me to take hold of at all. But you see, I think when we say to young teachers, now you go out and you really chew them out the first 2 weeks or so, what we're saying is, make them conform, and after you get their spirit broken, then you can tell them anything you want, and they'll sit quietly and sleep. And nobody knows better than I how difficult it is. No one's had more difficulty with rooms of elementary children trying to get this thing and the other thing to gel and put together. This is hard. This is hard no matter where we live it with our fellow man. The fourth quality of the classroom this summer, and by saying it publicly I hope to be able to do it, is to see if I can foster in teachers the ability to keep on wondering and be puzzled about and be perfectly able to say, I've never heard of that before. Oh, that sounds like an interesting idea. Rather than to kind of feel like we ought to have heard everything and be kind of, sophisticated by now. But that when we really are wondering and puzzled, that we can keep this wonderment and puzzlement of children with us the rest of our lives. Because every person I've read that's done anything in this field indicates that the ability to be puzzled, the capacity to wonder about, the capacity to have a hunch and identify it, and then try to find out about it. Every person I've read says that this must be to be creative. Every person I've read and every person I've talked with, every bit of thinking I've done says to me, you have to be able to venture out all by yourself. And then the last quality of this room this summer is that there's going to be plenty of time for messing with ideas and materials. Plenty of time to get the feel of something. You ever watch children with clay or with a woolly worm the first time? Play with it and feel with it and handle it and put it in their mouth and 100 other things. That's what we're going to do this summer with ideas. We're going to just do all the kinds of playing with and getting the feel of, what this would be like if you try it this way. Well, I think it's a harebrained idea, but let's see what would happen if you taught arithmetic this way. Well, I know very well that second graders can't do this kind of creative writing, but okay, let's just play with it and see. Now, what would happen if we do so and so and so and so? One of the things that worries me is when a young teacher goes out and thinks that she can have a lesson in finger painting and get a product and get the thing taught and get it all done in one period and have something to wrap up the Mother's Day gift in. I knew I'd strike a chord on that. I can tell who the elementary teachers are here. You've got to play with finger paint and play with it. In World War II, every Sunday afternoon at our house in Cushing, the adults of the community gathered and finger painted. You've got to play with it, you've got to get the feel of it, you've got to handle it before you know what you can do with finger paint. You've got to play with a woolly worm, you've got to taste it and sample it in all ways before you know about woolly wormness. And you've got to have the same kind of experience with cows, and I just sort of believe you've got to have the same kind of experience with ideas of teaching. And you've got to have the same kind of experiences with children and with college students. And I think sometimes the college students think that nobody's scared of them. And that isn't true. We don't always understand about them and how they function and how do you get the feel of what it is, what college students are. So there's going to be lots of opportunities to get the feel of, to play with ideas. We're going to try on life in a new way. We're really going to wrestle with this notion of what self-discipline is. See, we're going to play with it from all the angles we can think of. And we're going to really try in every way that we can think of to get the feel of what it's like to be the child who lives in the houses around the school where I teach. And then because we are teachers, to have the perspective and the outlook that enables us to live with and allow these people to be the creators within that community. We're going to play with words and sentences, and we're going to play with the way of getting things down. You see, all these kinds of things that you do every day. If you really believe that human beings have to play with and meddle with and mess with and manipulate and handle and deal. We've talked an awfully long time in this world, I think, about some of these things. Now, we're going to see this summer if we can do more of getting the real notion for us. Want to react to any of those 2 points?
In athletic ability, you get it by discipline and repetition and a lot of other things that need self-discipline. And I wonder in the mental process, in order to get a reflex mental action, don't you have to follow some well-defined limits or something that causes discipline?
Getting into the area of this self-discipline and the way he sees it in athletics, yes, I expect that we have to discipline ourselves to, what would you say, to not call black white, to realize when we're in areas of grayness, to keep ourselves from getting into the dichotomy, it's this or this. We have to discipline ourselves to come down the line and say, what are the facts as I see them? And to hear somebody else say, no, these are the facts as I see them. And then to get a drawing together. I think there are some rules and regulations. I don't think that we have to know them ahead of time. I don't think that you have to have studied rhetoric and logic and all the rest of those things to get the ability But I think you have to be honest. I don't know if that makes sense. And you have to practice. Claudia?
Well, I'm not sure I understand what you mean, but I think that's true. And if that's true, then with ideas, it makes thinking a process. And when a child is going to set the wall, he doesn't have much vision. And so we're working with ideas as that child is at the beginning of learning to catch and throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
With the ideas, we have a very free, open range at the beginning. Later, I think the disciplining of ideas can come.
Mm-hmm. That helps me. Mm-hmm. And all of those I don't know, I'm probably more Christian. And all the children, I've never come across a child yet that didn't have ideas that if we really provided the kind of a climate and the opportunity. The young man said, we don't know where it's going to come. Well, you can just be very sure that if there are no paints in the room and no paper to paint on, you'll never get creativity in the area of paint. And any fifth grade room that doesn't have paint and paper is certainly limiting the creativity. The atmosphere has to be such that you can. And then those people must live within some bond. Yes, this is difficult. And I'm sure I trip myself 100 times as I try to think through. And smartiness isn't always smartiness either. Sometimes it's just smartness. So you want to react further on this?
There's a feeling that do that, and I can use it, and someone correlated because the difficult problems are a little different in these areas, and some other problems are also. There's a matter of the self-discipline, the matter of the supplementing yourself somewhat for the discipline, and blending and filling it, containing individuality, and increasing and also and yet, because you have this problem of self-discipline, I think they can make it conform from the process to this problem.
We're just in the beginning of this, and you and I are going to have to think through with each other. And we do stifle. And we do get in the way of. And sometimes we'll have to get in the way of. Because I also remember Margaret Mead saying that probably the person inventing gets as much satisfaction and growth from inventing or creating something that is morally not good as he does from something that's morally good. You make sense out of that, what I want you to make out of it, or what you want to make out of it. But that the creative process, and I frequently say this to students, don't watch what's going on to the paper. Watch what's happening to the face and the body, the arms, the legs. This will be the answer when you finger paint and when you work with clay. See, creativity doesn't have to terminate in an object that's creative to give evidence of creativity in my mind. Dave?
I think in thinking about what this has to do in our future, this of it said that our grandchildren are living communism. If we raise a creative bunch of grandchildren, we're not going to want them at all. They won't conform at all.
That's right.
This is our best way to find communism.
And we're certainly busy raising grandchildren, so, I mean, as I listened this morning to Dr. Miller.